issue has been the journey that you're going to be speaking about while you're here. What's going to be the message of it?
Oh man, there's a lot of messages, but the biggest one is I'd say it's never too late to tell the truth. For me, I kept a secret, from my family, my closest friends for the better part of 14 years. It's never too late to tell the truth, and the truth will also set you free. I have a lot to speak about, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, you co-authored the book with Dan Coyle, and in the foreword, Dan actually says that the more he got to speak about you and about what happened during the time that you were cycling and during your career, you became so obsessed with revealing the truth, almost as obsessed as winning the Tour de France. Where is this obsession from, this obsession to tell the truth? Tell everybody exactly about your doping schedules and what you took.
Well, I think deep down it was like I needed to do it for myself, to get it all off my chest. I'd been keeping these deep, dark secrets in for so long. For so long I was winning basically at all costs. A lot of doping and so focused on it. And I kind of went through a process and this experience where I realized, wow, I did all this for the wrong reasons, and now I need to tell the truth, and not just a part of the truth, but the whole truth. And it wasn't easy. Writing this book was probably the hardest thing I ever did, harder than any Tour de France I ever did, that's for sure. But I'm proud. I'm not necessarily proud of what's in there, but I'm proud of what I'm proud of finally doing the right thing, finally telling the truth, and hopefully people can learn from this. Not just athletes, but all sorts of people. Winning at all costs. There's a lot of pressure these days to succeed, and not just in sport.
But that pressure hasn't gone away. That desire for young sportsmen and women to win hasn't gone anywhere.
Sure.
And the stakes have just gotten higher. Sure.
Well, they say education is the foundation for the future, so hopefully this book is, one way to inform, up-and-coming athletes of some of the dangers in the sport. I'd only heard about some of the rumblings about doping before I really arrived at the pinnacle of cycling, and I wish somebody had sat down with me and talked and told me about what to expect. Back when the year before I basically arrived at the top tier of cycling, the only thing I heard about doping was, I wonder if they are doping over in Europe, which is at the top tier of cycling and worldwide. And I quickly learned and quickly got invited into that fraternity. And it was like, I got a little bit of mud on my shoes in the first year, a little bit of doping, and then before I knew it, I was up to my neck in it. And it was like the point, I felt like I was at the point of no return, and I kept going, and the lies kept getting bigger and bigger, and it was kind of like a snowball effect.
What made you make that decision? I am going to be a part of the white bag crew.
Yeah, the white lunch bags, yeah. A lot of it was being kind of accepted into this fraternity. When I initially arrived, I was racing, as they called it in Europe, on paniagua, on bread and water, without doping. And I was definitely a really good cyclist, but I couldn't stay with even remotely close with the best there in Europe. And I knew guys were doping, and I knew I knew it was the last step before success, and I knew if I was invited into that small little room, that the results could change. And in a way, it was like I knew I had to go through that process before I achieved the biggest step, which is competing for victory in the Tour de France.
Your history runs side by side that of Lance Armstrong. He's even on the cover of your book. You're his lieutenant for 3 of his tour wins, and you speak a lot about that tumultuous relationship. What was the feeling you got when that Oprah Winfrey interview aired and he said, I have doped and I have done this?
You have to applaud Lance for finally telling the truth. Just like myself, he'd been lying for a long time. And to finally hear the truth come out of his mouth was great. Obviously, he he didn't get into a whole lot of detail about the truth. Hopefully in the future he'll give more details, but he did answer the biggest question, which was, you know, whether or not he doped for his 7 Tour de France victories. And, you know, that was nice for me to hear. And, you know, it's sad that he went through that I went through that. You know, Lance Armstrong didn't invent doping. I didn't invent doping. It was highly encouraged at that time in our lives by the teams that we were involved in. The culture of cycling, you know, back in the mid-90s, it was rampant. You know, my first Tour de France was in 1997. If there were 200 riders on the start line, I would say at least 195 were doping. So it was, you know, it wasn't just a few of us.
So then what do you say to the argument then, well, it should be okay that everybody keeps their victories because it was a level playing field?
It wasn't. You know, I've heard that argument a lot, but it's not a level playing field. Everybody's different. You know, doping products cost money. The more doping you do, the more it costs, and then that, you know, it starts with this little red pill of testosterone, and then it leads to EPO, which is injections. Then it leads to possibly blood doping, which is highly expensive. It takes a lot of different people involved. Not all riders can afford to do that. Not all teams can afford to do that. There's all these different levels of doping. We all, you know, back in 1997, yes, we're pretty much, the most of us were doping at the elite level, but we weren't necessarily all doing the same kind of doping methods.